You want to start, of course, with yeast, dried yeast. And when you buy dried yeast, you're either going to buy it in a package or you're going to buy it in a jar like this if you make a lot of yeasted products. And if you buy it in a jar like this, once it's opened, you want to keep it in the refrigerator or the freezer. So for this basic dough, this is a basic pizza dough you could use for any type of pizza. We want about 1 1/4 cups of warm water. I mean warm water, not hot water. Water that's about 110, 115 degrees. And if you've never made dough before and you're a little you're a little timid about what the water temperature should be, get yourself an instant read thermometer. And then you'll know by putting the thermometer in the water and looking at it what temperature you have. Because if the water is too cold, then the yeast is not going to ferment. If the water is too hot, you're going to kill the yeast. So you want about a teaspoon, I use a teaspoon and a half of yeast in water. And the less yeast you use, the slower will be the rise, the better will be the flavor. That's an important thing to remember. You don't need to use a whole packet of yeast to make dough. This 1 1/2 teaspoons is enough for us to proof about 6 cups of flour. So you let the yeast dissolve in the water, and now you need the flour. So for this, you want to use a good unbleached all-purpose flour, something that has a protein content of about 11%, because you need to develop gluten. So I'm going to start with about 3 cups of flour. When you make dough, after a while your hands tell you if you have enough flour. So let's start with about 3 cups. We can always correct this. If it's too dry, we can add a little bit of water. If it's too wet, we can add a little bit of flour. I'm going to give this about a tablespoon or teaspoon of olive oil. Give that just a bit more, because I like the flavor of olive oil in dough. And of course, we need salt. Salt is going to give you flavor, and it's going to control the rise. If you make dough without salt, it's just going to run rampant, and then you will not have very good flavor development. So that's all there is. So then the next thing is to use your hands and to get yourself a ball of dough. So don't add the flour all at once. Add it a little bit at a time. And I know just by feeling this that I'm going to add just a bit more flour to this dough to get it where I want it. Once you have it on your board, then you want to knead it. And this is a really good help in the kitchen. It's a bench knife, and it helps you lift and turn the dough. And you'll know if you need more flour when the dough sticks to your hands. And I know that I need a bit more. So I'm just going to add a little bit right around the dough. Not too much, because I want to control this. If you add too much flour, you're going to have a dough that doesn't move, that's going to be very hard, and the texture is not going to be very good. So that's just about the right amount of flour. Then you have to do the knead, which is what I'm doing for you now, to disperse those yeast cells. And the best way to do that is to start at 12 o'clock. Put this in your mind. You start at 12 o'clock, you bring the dough over, and you push with your hand, and then turn, a quarter turn. And you get into this rhythm until this dough is nice and soft and smooth. Then what you need to do is put a little bit of olive oil back in that bowl. So this needs about 5 minutes of kneading. You take that dough, put it in a bowl, and just move it around in that olive oil, just to coat it. That's all there is to it. Now you cover it, and you put this somewhere warm, but not in your oven. You do not want to put that, you don't want to preheat the oven and then put the dough in there, because that'll make it too warm. You want it somewhere where it's about 75 degrees. That's warm enough for dough to proof. So when it is proofed, isn't this gorgeous? It looks like this. Here's a dough that's all ready to go. Now we're going to be putting this on a perforated pizza pan. See, it's a non-stick pan and it has holes. And what this is going to do is help the crust cook evenly on the bottom so that it's not soggy. So you punch down the dough, you take it out of the bowl it's in, and now you've got to knead that again. And the whole point here is to really disperse those yeast cells so that everything is very uniform throughout the dough. So you give it a couple kneads, and you really need to let dough relax. You want to relax the gluten, because if it isn't relaxed, it's going to spring back on you, and it's going to be very difficult to work. So you'll know by feel and also by rolling out the dough whether or not you can roll it. So let it relax on your counter a little bit. Then, excuse me, I got a little frog in my throat because I'm getting so excited here. Then you want to put a little bit of flour on the board, not too much, again controlling this, and roll this out. So let's flatten it out some, and then you roll the dough out. And if it is relaxed enough, it's not going to spring back and hit you. You see, and as you move the dough around on the board, you're going to relax that gluten as you roll. So you get it to an even thickness. Now we're going to make, a 10 or 12 inch pie here. And lift the dough up every now and then and turn it. If it sticks, again, you want to add just a bit. You see, I'm not adding very much flour at all. So now you get it on your bake sheet and you stretch it out. Well, there it is. You give this a little bit of olive oil over the top. Give it a nice brushing. And your oven is on at 375 degrees. You're going to let this rise for about 20 or 25 minutes.